and share my screen. And I have to say, I got to first and foremost, officially, for all those on playback as well, is to welcome everybody to 2023. And this is our first public live session for the year, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'm really super excited. I kind of wanted to go, you know, I thought what I'd do today is go Holly go lightly on themes, but actually I just couldn't, because I don't know whether you saw my newsletter of last week, and also my poll on Monday, which was, you know, is this the year for real transformation? Is this the year where we need our leaders to be transformational, and everything that comes with that? And it was really surprising to me, or not, that the poll that I put out on Monday, as I looked at it last night, 90% of people were saying this is the year for transformational leadership. So quite interesting, isn't it? But when it comes to mindset and thinking about who we are and our work in the Dilyn Way and humanizing transformation, we really want to be thinking about, what does that mean at a human level? What does it mean at a cognitive level? What does it mean for us in humanizing transformation? So what I wanted to do today was I just wanted to look at these two things, the improvement mindset versus the transformation mindset. Now, normally what we do is we look at growth mindset versus fixed, don't we? But why don't we do something a wee bit different today? So that's what we're going to do. And of course, if we've got some time at the end, then we can go into open discussion. But we've got a really small group today. So if there's a thought or a question, pop it into the chat, or indeed just say, Mel, stop, I want to ask you something, and we'll go from there. But not a huge amount of content today in terms of depth, because what I want to do is I want really today to be more of an introduction to these two mindsets, and then over the coming weeks and months we'll probably go deeper into each and every one of them. But I guess, as always, a good place to start is with what is everybody else saying, what is out there in the ether. And I always do a little bit of a kind of a research piece with every one of my lives on Wednesdays, and see whether there's a quote that is either inspirational or provoking in terms of what it's saying. And it's quite interesting what we've got here by the DMP at Ernst & Young, a lady called Chang-Ho Lee, and she's talking about the transformative mindset. What is interesting is that over and above our own work in the Dilyn Way, there is quite a lot of literature out in the ether around the transformational, transformative mindset. It is not all saying the same things. So I think it's really for us to define what it means for us as one of the key messages for today. What I'm doing today is I'm presenting to you the transformational mindset from a Dilyn Way perspective, from our perspective in the framework and approach. But I think it's really important for us to understand what it means for us. And I think the other thing as well that this brings up for me is this conversation around definition. I was with a leadership team yesterday, and there were very specific words that were used throughout the session with the leadership team. We had the word crisis, we had the word transformation, we had the word change, we had the word improvement, we had the word collaboration. We had those words coming out in conversation that people had different versions of what they meant for them within their own mindset and also for their teams. So one of the things that came out as a priority action after yesterday's session with the leadership team was, in this particular time of change, transformation, or evolution, wherever you want to call it, we need to understand our narrative. What are the key words that we're using in our language, and making sure that we're united by definition, so that when we're all saying transformation, we may not agree, but we're united in what that word transformation means, so that there is a consistency that is rippling out throughout the organization. Quite an interesting thing for us to think about. I think definitions are going to become really important to us all in 2023 as we navigate the extremity of change with the constancy of change in daily life. So really interesting. Start with a quote, Mel. That's what I always like doing, of course. So I guess to begin with, in the bad place for us to think about definition, isn't it? Before we go into the improvement mindset and transformation mindset. Now, I was going to put something else up on the screen, but I decided to put the two images that you've got here because they're more organizationally driven in terms of structure. If we are improving an organizational structure from what it currently is, which might be more kind of traditional and hierarchical and triangular, you know, we've got the CEO at the top, and then we've got 3 people reporting into that human, and then it goes down and down and down and more and more and more wide as it goes down the triangle. That we might want to be improving that. But equally, what we might want to be doing is transforming into something completely different, which is Aka, the other side of the screen on the right, which is, you know, really for me a visualization of what is more of a networked ecosystem, or some, you know, using a model like Semco style to come in and actually bring real structural fluidity to how our organization is. Another way of actually looking at improvement versus transformation would be that if on the left-hand side, we had the body, I don't know whether you've seen it on TikTok and Instagram, but you've seen it kind of like, this is the before me with a little bit of maybe a pot belly. And this is the after me with a 6-pack rippled kind of chest, you know. What I have been doing there is I am still a human being, but I have been improving myself. I'm making myself better. It's betterment of the current state. But if, you know, if we were pro Elon Musk, we probably might be a little bit more transformational. And I remember being on a leadership program and we were talking about improvement versus transformation. And a lady said, my son has got a chip in his wrist. So he's half robot. I was like, wow, what's that all about? And it was about some neurodiverse conditions that he had, and how he was working through a hugely edgy experimental, clinically monitored, of course, but a medical test, an experiment for using some kind of, you know, technology within his wrist to support his conditions. So we kind of had this chat about that. So if we were a human moving towards becoming a robot, what you can see there is I'm no longer a human. I am actually now a robot. So I have transformed into something different. So the difference between improvement and transformation are really important for us to know. Now, yeah, Mel, that was just way out there. Why don't we bring it more into context of daily life and the work and the world that we live in? So thinking about improvement versus transformation, here's another way of looking at it. So if we are trying to make our current state better, then a great example of that is looking at the British cycling team. And if you think about what happened with the British cycling team, what they did was they looked at every single area of their current state and tried to make it better, smarter, or faster. So it was all for the betterment of the current state. So they painted the inside of their trucks white, so it was easier for them to see when there was dirt around the bikes. You know, they tweaked tiny things on the gears so that they could get faster just by a little bit. So you can see that they were looking at all areas of the current state to see where they could bring betterment, as a phrase, in terms of making it better, smarter, or faster. As opposed to perhaps something like Netflix, when they started life, were yes in the world of media, but what they were doing was they were a model that was a subscription model for videos and DVDs through the letterbox. So whilst they might have made themselves, when they launched the subscription model, they were still in the world of DVDs. So that could be argued as, you know, an improvement on what they were, until 2007, when they made a radical shift into the world of streaming, and they suddenly had to become something completely different. So, you know, they moved into something completely different. And the key thing is this: when you are in improvement mode, more often than not, your focus is on what you are or where you are now to make it better, faster, or smarter. And it can come from any area of that now state, that current state. But when we are in transformation mode, what we have is we have a vision of the future. And what we do is we design backwards. So we don't make what we've got today better, faster, or smarter as much as what we do is we create shifts from where we are today, but each one of those shifts is designed from the future vision, from the future state, and we reverse back. So the slight nuance that you can see here on the visualization is those arrows on the right-hand side, the transformational side, are the same color as the square, because each one of those shifts is designed from the visualization and the purpose of the square, as opposed to the orange circle, which is what is on the left-hand side. So it's really, really interesting when you start to unpick the difference between the two. So what I want to do is I just want to take us through a little bit of what the improvement mindset might look like in terms of indicators, in terms of a human being, and in terms of leadership, and in terms of practice around change. So these are things that you might recognize in yourself, you might recognize in others. I think I'll come on to it in a moment, but I think for the next few slides, let's just keep an open mind. But just for now, what we're doing is we're focusing on the improvement mind. And the improvement mindset is an individual that does believe in making things better, making what we've got and who we are today better. So they're designing from that current state. Interestingly, when you look at literature, and there is neuroscience literature on the improvement versus the transformational mindset, what you see is the majority of people that when we're in an improvement mode is when we're seeking the solution. We're seeking the solution. And there's this sense of holding on to our past and our identity in the past current, which is the legacy focus. We also, which is very interesting, grow from where we are in order for us to change. We also need focus, and we can sometimes, when we're in that improvement mindset, can be very honed in on where are the problems, where are the gaps, where are the things that need to be filled in. So the overarching thing about the improvement mindset is that we're wanting to get that current state better, faster, or smarter. So with an open mind, what I want everybody to do is I want everybody to think, gosh, do I see myself in any of those elements? Do I see others in those elements? And if you are in an improvement project or program, or in an improvement initiative, are they helping? If you're in a transformation project, program, or initiative, if you've got these behaviors or these mindsets manifesting, are they helping transformation? So just some thoughts for you to think about there. What I do want to do, however, which is closer to the heart of the Dilyn Way, is to focus a little bit more on this transformation mindset, or the transformational mindset, because that's really what we want to help people to foster and develop, certainly through 2023 as one of our goals. So what are some of the things that are the indicator of a transformational mindset? Well, the transformational mindset believes in the future, believes in a future that a lot of people around us can't see. And if I can't see it, I can't believe in it. So until you show it to me, I'm not going to believe in it. But these are believers in an uncertain future. They believe in the untapped potential and possibility. And because of that, very much, they're experimental, and they think experimentally. And of course, thinking experimentally is not going into the solution, but it's thinking about how many right answers there might be for this, how many different ways, what if. There's something really interesting as well that's come out of the broader literature around the transformational mindset, which is so in keeping with the Dilyn Way framework, is that the transformational leader, the person with a real transformational mindset, believes it is something that is for everyone. It's not elitist. We don't have to be a particular type of person in order to be transformational, because transformation does and should exist in everyday life and business as usual. The question is how, the question is where. Very much the transformational leader is also a networked and systems thinker. They're looking at the wider system and not to the boundaries of the organization or the project or program, but way, way, way beyond that, moving into the 3 tenets, of course. So they're very much beyond boundary. They're looking beyond where everybody else thinks, the frame of reference ends. And the interesting nuance here is they change to grow. They don't grow to change. And that's I had to sit on this one myself for a little while. And I just thought to myself, is this just something that should be, one of those puzzles in the back page of a newspaper or something like that? But it's interesting when you sit with the 2 phrases, am I growing to change or am I changing to grow? And how does that change and manifest? Where do those 2 differences come into who I am as a manager and a leader, who I am as an individual, as a human being? Really interesting. And one of the things that we found as well in our work is that transformational mindset, the transformational mindset very much is opportunity seeking. It's not we can't. It's not we need to just stay with what we've got here. We just need to get now right before we do all of that fancy stuff over there. It's not that at all. It's always been open to look at the opportunity seeking. So just moving into each one of those just a little bit more in a little bit more depth, or just broadening it out a wee bit. From the future back, this is really, really important, because I think certainly for those of us that might be thinking about becoming practitioners in the Dilyn way, and as those of us that are practitioners in the Dilyn way, one of the things that we really do work on is the tools and the techniques and the mindset and the behaviors for us to be able to competently and confidently design from the future back. So a lot of visioning work, is really wanting to design from the future back. What does that look like? What are the things that we need to do in order to do that? And if we are designing from the future back, what does that do in terms of our results? What does that do in terms of impact? What does that do in terms of the outcome? How does that shift it on? What does it do in terms of purpose? Really, really important. They believe in the future because they are interested in what could be. And there's something really important here about what I've put underneath here, which is the explorer attributes. They are happy to step forward into uncharted territory when others aren't. Do you recognize that in yourself? Do you recognize that in people around you that are willing to step forward into uncharted territories, or voice when others might be conforming, or when others might be, stepping back? Are they trying to respond and lean into maybe things that could be considered radical, when everybody else is saying, no, actually, what we need to do is we need to be reacting to survive? Really important. Do you recognize those? And of course, the experimental that I mentioned earlier on, it's an absolute blinder evidence point. A transformational mindset is somebody that recognizes that there's more than one right answer. So it's not the solution, it's all of the possibilities. It's the scenarios that we're looking at, and not necessarily solutionizing. So if there are scenarios, we can work with those. And when we're thinking experimentally, of course, we've got pioneer attributes. And what I mean by pioneer attributes is, in order for us to be experimental, to think about how many right answers there are, what do we need? We need networks. We need diversity. And pioneers are the people that experiment by thinking, if I bring A together with B, what difference can I spark? So they are thinking about the beyond obvious connections. These are the people that, when they're talking about collaboration, they're not bringing obvious stakeholders together. They're bringing beyond obvious stakeholders together bringing difference, to spark something new, to help them with the scenarios and the how many right answers. So the experimental thinking and the attitudes and the behaviors that manifest as a result are really, really important for the transformational mindset. The for everyone element, I think this is super important, especially in the world that we're living now, which is a world of pica, pace, inevitability, convergence, and accelerants. Yeah, the extremes of change. We're no longer in a world where it's just change is the constant. We're in a world where change is the constant, and at any given moment, extremes of change are going to drop on our doorstep. COVID, floods, Brexit, you name it. There, wars, the extremities of change, the accelerants are becoming. The extremes are increasing, but also in terms of the amount of them as well. So what we want to be doing when we're thinking about changes, transformational mindset for everyone, is thinking about how are we able to start to bring the essence, some of the tiny minutiae of that future vision into everyday business as usual, into some of the behaviors, into some of the words and the narrative perhaps of the leaders. Just tiny little things, just like every snowball that we roll along the snow has an inevitability of getting bigger over time. That's what we need to be looking at here. And the transformational mindset believes that the world of transformation exists for everybody. It's not an elite group of people that have got particular expertise or experience that sit in a room, in a project, and all the walls are closed and locked behind them. It's like Fort Knox. Nobody's allowed in until they deem it ready to push it out to the rest of the world. And hey, that's where projects fail dramatically, isn't it? So thinking about how we bring it into the nooks and crannies of business as usual, as I've got here, and recognizing that transformation is by permission for everybody. By permission for everybody. And this is something as well that I challenged yesterday with the leadership team, is how do we make transformation something that everybody feels they've got permission to think in a transformational way? Might not be ever manifesting it, but if they can think in a transformational way, they can put forward ideas. They can have conversations that are beyond boundary in order to support a world that's not just better from today, but actually is helping us get to a vision of the future that might be a moonshot. Really interesting. By the way, I will tell you that there was a real moment of paused silence when I posed that to the room. It was like, don't quite know what you just said there, Mel, but boy, what a fantastic conversation that we had for about 20 minutes afterwards. So the network that I mentioned earlier on, it is incredibly important for the transformational leader, the transformational human, to seek diversity in their connections and always recognize that collaboration isn't about the obvious people working together. Because if obvious stakeholders are working together, then that's kind of business as usual. If we're really seeking to collaborate for difference, we want beyond obvious connections. Maybe there is that group of people that might be in the same sector as you, but they're in New Zealand. If we bring them together with us in the UK, beyond obvious connections, maybe bringing people from different sectors together with us as a design team or a leadership team or a project team, just to seek difference. It might be generational, it might be cultural, but going beyond obvious with our connections, especially in the design stage, is something that is natural to us when we're fostering and developing a transformational mindset. And that's why we're seeking diversity. We don't want everybody to be like us in the room when we're designing, because all we're going to get is more of the same, right? It's going to be analogous thinking that wins at the end of the day. And it's really important for us to absolutely recognize that network mind. If we're thinking about a transformational mindset, I think we would all agree that these three things that I've got up on the slide here are pretty important, right? We have to be courageous. And how do we support that? How do we nourish and nurture it? How do we develop it? And also anti-fragile. I use the term anti-fragile instead of resilience, because resilience for me is something that I've noticed in conversations, people say that, yes, we're building resilience. And when we become resilient, we've got to that boundary, we're resilient. We've got to that place, but actually resilience is something that keeps going. We need to keep nurturing it, keep supporting it, keep evolving it. So for me, the term anti-fragile is something that I think is lovely, because we can at any given moment be more perceptive towards being anti-fragile. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, someone with a transformational mindset is confident enough to be able to stand alone. And when everybody around us is saying the complete opposite, believing the complete opposite, doing the complete opposite. One of the things that were very interesting, for me, we were with 120 people on Monday, a different customer, different group of people. What was really interesting is there were a couple of moments in the day where we had a word cloud. And what was really interesting is, when you do a word cloud, and you can see the words kind of coming up on the screen there. The big screen, 120 people, massive room, right? So it's a big word cloud, and the question was posed to everybody in the room. And the first 3 words came, and you could see that those words were getting fatter and fatter, and 1 or 2 other words were coming in. But as people were seeing what other people were saying, they were leaning, consciously or unconsciously, they were leaning to some of those words there. Now, interestingly enough, we had a conversation with an organizational design practitioner afterwards, and she challenged the facilitator, and she said, why did you show everybody the word cloud as they were answering the question, so that they could see what everybody else was putting in? Because human nature is very much that we want to see what everybody else is saying, to maybe just decide what word I'm going to put in there, because do I want to stand out from the crowd? And she said, we always ask everybody to answer the question blindly, and then what we do is we visualize that word cloud. So I wonder for you, as a little bit of a test and experiment with the same group of people, what would happen if you did both of those 2 different things, and what would come up for you? So that's the tiny little kind of look-see at the transformational mindset versus the improvement mindset. And I guess, one thing that comes up a lot of the time for me is, can you develop a transformational mindset? Is it something that you're born with, Mel? Is it part of DNA? I mean, am I just a courageous person, or is it something because of the upbringing that I had? I was in, my dad was an adventurer, so I was traveling all over the world, and I just became really, really, really into the future and uncertainty. No, it's poppycock. You absolutely can develop a transformational mindset. It's just, is there a purpose? Is there a reason? Is there a motivation there? Can it be developed? Absolutely, yes. Have we evidence of developing a transformational mindset capacity within the leaders that we've worked in over the years? Absolutely, damn right we have. Yes. Does it take time? Yes, it does. Does it take commitment? Yes, it does. Can you do it? The big question, the answer is yes. So it is absolutely not like the Carol Dweck model. And I'm going to go into that in a moment. But just because we're in a public arena, I just want to let everybody know that what are we talking about today? We're talking about humanizing transformation. The specific subject, of course, is around mindset and the improvement versus a transformational mindset. And it is all part of a wider thing, which is the humanizing transformation movement. And there is a practitioner certification that we have in humanizing transformation using the Dilyn Way framework for everybody, and that practitioner certification is available for you as a coach and mentor, but it is also available to you as a practitioner of change and transformation as well. And it's a framework, and it's an approach, and it is a practice. And we're a growing community, and a really, really, really good, closely knit community, and very, very welcoming. And it's absolutely a fantastic thing. If you'd like to know more about it, then please do be in touch with me. And also, for everybody that comes onto the public lives every Wednesday with me, I always say this, to be purposeful and to really lean into the Dilyn Way framework. If anybody would like to talk about who they are, what they're doing, where they're going, some support around strategy and now versus the future, then I'm always pro bono giving my time. So if you like that, then just pop yes into the chat and we will organize a time to speak together. But it is really important for everybody to be able to have access to some time around support in this context if you are a leader of change and transformation. So enough of that. Now moving back on to the subject of today. Are we one or the other? Are we one or the other? When we think about mindset theory, fixed mindset versus growth mindset in the work of Carol Dweck, an awful lot of leadership programs and an awful lot of literature still talks about how you can define whether a person is one or the other. But those of you that know the framework know that that is what we call, or what Carol Dweck calls, the false mindset. We are neither fixed or growth, we are both. And what is most important is for us to understand what triggers us into a fixed mindset, what triggers us into a growth mindset. And it is the triggers that we want to identify, because that's what we want to start controlling and developing. We want to start controlling the triggers that put us into fixed, and we want to be developing triggers that put us into growth. And we can use those same mindset theory techniques to support people with a transformational mindset. And this is another thing as well. Are you an improvement mindset or a transformational mindset? I don't know about you, and certainly I'm looking at you specifically here, Tom. At any given moment, we might need to be one or the other. It's not about just exclusively being one. It's about how are we able to really step into the shoes of focusing on improvement, because that is the requirement, and equally focusing on transformation because that is the requirement. And maybe just a blend of both of them, and just seeing how we can harmonize the two together. Super, super important. So if we are thinking about, is it an improvement mindset I need here? Or is it a transformational mindset that I need here? Either individually or for the leaders or for the team or for the people that we're working with. When is it right to be one or the other? And how do we shift from one to the other? And I think the answer to when is it right for a transformational mindset versus an improvement mindset is based on two key things, really, isn't it? It's need versus purpose. And in terms of need, are we facing a wicked problem here? Are we in a place where it is almost difficult for us to identify the challenge, let alone identify the solution? A little bit of work here sensing around the Knevin model, Tom. But just understanding the need, the reality of the need, versus what kind of challenge, what kind of solution. And then the other thing I think is very much about purpose, because if there is a moonshot purpose, if there is a real desire to capture the future and bring it into our realities, then that is a real time to lean into the transformational mindset. And very much for us, when I mentioned the word trigger earlier on, the word trigger is a technique that we use for helping people to be able to manage and control how they move from one mindset into the other. And that, of course, is the flow path technique. And it is a really, really, really powerful technique, especially when we're helping people navigate difference, change, newness, transformation. Really, really important. So in summary for today, given everything that I've taught, and I can see there's something in the chat, and I'll go there in a moment, just kind of starting to bring us into maybe the open for a wee chat and a conversation. Things for me that are really important is that transformational leadership, transformational mindset can absolutely be developed. It is absolutely something that can be developed. One thing that we do need to recognize, though, is that if there is a requirement, or if we are with someone that is leaning towards all of those things that I mentioned earlier on, you're working with a transformational mindset, the likelihood is that they're working from the future back. So if you are in a situation that is genuine improvement requirement and you've got a transformational mindset with you, you already know that the go-to mind for that person that is more transformational in the way that they think is they're looking from the future and they're trying to design back from that. Is that right for you? If you can recognize that that's the kind of mindset they are, then already you can think about some techniques, some coaching techniques, some conversational techniques to support them. But equally, think about, maybe they're right. Maybe this isn't improvement. Maybe transformation is the right thing for us. But certainly, in summary, for me, it is that each and every one of us can do both. And that's where the triggers are so incredibly important. That's where the technique of flow pathing is so incredibly important for us to recognize that. Because it might be that for one project or program, we might be in and out of minutiae of transformation and improvement. So it's not just the big picture thing, it's just understanding maybe at different cycles of a project and program, there might be a requirement for it to be transformational here versus improvement, even down to maybe sprints in the real minutiae of a project. So banana skins, I always give banana skins on a Wednesday live. So what are my 2 banana skins for today? I thought about this, and actually I guess it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Mixing the 2 up. We don't want to be both at the same time and muddying the water. It's really good for us to have a wee bit of clarity so that we can start to reflect and experiment and just test the waters and observe others, if not ourselves. So mixing the 2 up is a little bit, is a little bit of a no-no for me. Let's try and avoid that. And I guess the other banana skin that we can slip in up on is playing safe. And what I mean by that is it's 2023. Pika is real. It's not just pace, inevitability, and convergence that we're dealing with. We are dealing with extremes of change, increased extremities, and also higher volume of them in our worlds that we are working within, in the environments and in the conditions. So if we're always in the playing safe sandpit, at some stage, will we actually be left behind? And equally, if we're in the playing safe sandpit for too long, what that can do is it can, I'm not saying always, I'm not saying it does, but it can actually just drop people into anxiety and stress, because you can't stay in survival mode for too long, because there's only a matter of time before it starts to impact on the well-being of the individual, the human system. So playing safe might sound like it's a little bit of a throwaway comment, but there are human implications to us if we're staying in that sandpit for too long, given the inevitability of the world that we live in. So there we go. A little bit about the improvement mindset versus the transformational mindset, the difference between the two, the identification of when and how we might be able to oscillate between one or the other, or develop one that we might want to develop. So I guess just some thoughts before we go into a little bit of an hopefully open discussion, and maybe some thoughts and some questions from everybody is, where's your current focus? What you're working on at the moment. Is it improvement? Is it transformation? I mean, mindset. Do you feel that you're being a little bit too improvement focused when actually what you should be working on is transformational? So just thinking about that, and perhaps even thinking about the people around you. Who do you need around you at the moment? Do you need solid improvement thinking, behavior, and action around you, or do you need to infuse that with some transformational mindset, behavior, and actions around you? Thinking about those things. So that's today's little live on humanizing transformation, thinking about those 2 mindsets. I'm just going to pop into chat. Oh, there we go. It's Dilyn just saying they have to pop onto another call, but just want to bring it out into the round and just see any thoughts or any questions that people might have. Tom, I can see that you're already nodding there.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. The thing that I really like to is a reminder, because I know it's we've been through it in the Dilyn way, but the idea that there's triggers that can switch you between the improvement mindset and the transformation mindset. I think the thing for me was, when you understand that there are triggers to switch people between those two mindsets, then you understand that as a leader, you are part of being a trigger for the people around you. And if we want, transformation is for everyone. If we want to create an environment where people are constantly being triggered to think in a transformational way, then as leaders, we've got a responsibility to to role model that behavior. And I think it's good to be aware of your own, but I think it's also good to be aware that you are part of the triggers for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something that we did yesterday, which I guess isn't something that we've formally done before, but starting to we had a little bit of a conversation at a senior leadership level for it. Do we start to informally talk about triggers when we come together? So we've got agenda items as a senior leadership team, but the more we socialize and become familiar with the concept of triggers that put us into one or the other, or what we're seeing manifest across the organization as we're traveling through what is a very radical transformational requirement for them. And I thought that was a really healthy conversation that they had there, that they actually agreed that they should bring conversation of triggers into their regular leadership meetings. Interesting, huh?
Yes. I also, just as a sort of follow-on point, I remember going to a conference once, and the keynote speaker, it might not even been the keynote, it might have been the person that was kind of hosting the event. Right at the start, they said, well done for taking the time out of your daily life to consider and broaden your horizons. I'd just like to invite you all to just park your work for the day and put your phones in your pocket, stay away from your laptop, because you've got this opportunity. And what he was doing there was actively triggering that transformational mindset. Like, open up your mind to all the things that you're going to see today, and don't be distracted and have your mind elsewhere. Be focused on what you can see today.
Absolutely. And John, just from our perspective, just in terms of mentoring and coaching, that's really what we're doing with contracting, isn't it? At the beginning of a conversation, is the contracting really is creating the best environment for the individual that we're working to, or the individuals that we're working with, to be in the best mindset for the gaining the maximum value of the conversation.
Sorry, I just realised that my screen is frozen. Apologies.
I know. I didn't know whether you were going, I don't agree with you at all there, Mel. I said, that's really interesting. John, I thought you really would.
Restart. Sorry, I'm going to be in Australia for a micro. Oh no, it's still. It's gone. But yes. In answer to your question, yes, I think. But I'm not certain which comes first. It's a bit chicken or egg. I think you can be a good mentor if you understand people and understand what they're going through. And I think, conversely, to lead in transformation, you need to understand people, and you need to understand what they're going through and see things from their point of view.
Yeah. So and I think, given what you've just said there, which is absolutely a truism of leadership, in particular a truism of leadership transformation, is our observational acumen for our own triggers and noticing the triggers of people around us is super important. Super important.
Yes, very definitely. And
yeah. And that then, I guess, also leans into things like peak performance and high performing teams. It's not so much defining people into boxes as much as it's, certainly from a mindset perspective, it's what are the triggers that are potentially putting my team into a situation where I've never seen that happen on Zoom before, somebody upside down. That's amazing. Oh, do that again. But I think it's really, really important for us when we're a manager of a team to really understand triggers so that we can start to notice what what triggers an individual into maybe silence or conforming or high performance versus lower performance or low productivity or distraction. Really noticing those things are part of the leadership focus point for us to be more productive. So again, it's into that kind of awareness and empathy that we talk about a lot, isn't it?
Yes, I think I'm going to be a little bit controversial and say that I would like to get rid of the word, both the word manager and the word leader.
Nothing controversial in that at all. Let's go for it. Go on, John.
I think what we need today really is actually facilitators, and it's people who are able to allow others to do their best. And I think very definitely, in line with that, I'm very, very supportive of the idea of servant leadership.
Yeah.
It's the concept of actually, what do I need to do to allow you to do your best? What do I need to put in place to allow you to be effective? And that for me was the role I particularly had in when I was in knowledge and information management. And it was, what do I need to do? How do I need to display information so that actually it's easy for you to do your job?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a formula, there's a saying which is a formula, and it says productivity equals potential minus interference. Have you ever heard of that before?
I haven't.
That's brilliant.
No, but yes.
Productivity equals potential minus interference. So, how do we get rid of the friction? How do we remove the interference so that productivity equals that, that potential? And that potential can flourish. Really, really great. It's a great formula. It's a great saying, great quote. And I don't know who said it actually, so I might have to Google that. We are sadly a few minutes over on today, but I just want to ask if there's any other thoughts, any closing thoughts, any questions that anybody might have on today's subject.
Well, just reflecting on the last thing you said in the main talk was about understanding where we are, not mixing them up as a banana skin.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a project I'm working on at the moment, which part of it is just improvement and part of it is genuine transformation. What I don't want the organization I'm working with to do is to miss the differences. Because I think that there's a chance that they label it all as improvement or all as transformation, and bits of it are and bits of it are not. And I just wonder if that's a sensible thing to do, to kind of pull it to bits and say, look, this thing we're doing over here is genuinely new and transformative, and we've never done it like that before, and that's going to take some new thinking. And this bit over here is just an improvement on what we had already.
So, a couple of things. So, your narrative and language is so incredibly important. This stuff here is transformation, and this stuff here is just improvement.
Right.
Neither one is better or less than the other, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing. So, number one, I would say definition. So there is genuine aligned understanding, or at least if it's not aligned, it's united on the difference between transformation and business as usual improvement, continuous improvement, or whatever you want to call it. But define those words. Then key narrative. So just making sure that we're not being diminutive of change versus the wonderful word of transformation, because they're equally as valuable as each other in the right way. And then I think the other thing is then to, if you recognize that both are valuable, it's just like two-speed tech, isn't it? Just like two-speed tech. If we're being bimodal, then it's just about, okay, what are the human nuances between the two? So our attitudes, our beliefs, and our focus and our habits here need to be about incremental 1%, and that can come from anywhere. Yeah. So just thinking again about the British cycling team, when you're working with a team on improvement, they can go anywhere within the boundaries of now to improve. That's their permission. They can go anywhere within the boundaries of now to improve, anywhere, any direction. When you're in transformation, everybody has to be going in the same direction because we're designing from a moonshot backwards. So it's the permission, do you know what I mean? The unspoken agreements of when I'm in improvement. Oh my God, that is amazing. I've got the permission to improve, in any space from now, because that's what my job is. I'm in transformation. Oh my goodness, I have the permission to design from the future to now. So I think, that's a really nice way of looking at the two things.
Yeah, and that people who think they're in a transformational mindset, but without that clear vision and purpose, that's where you get wasted effort and people running off in scattergun projects. And okay,
exactly. No, and it's very important. And again, back to even right at the top at a leadership conversation, we do need to understand, especially if you've got different lines of businesses, or if we're in public sector, we've got different services, or, see Caroline's here, Caroline, you've got lots of lines of businesses, from a financial perspective. If you've got that, you might have a culture over here that are saying, oh my God, we're doing, transformation, absolutely amazing stuff, because what we've done is we've put in a new technology, but they're doing exactly the same thing. They're behaving in exactly the same way, but they're doing it smarter and they're doing it faster. And then you've got the same team over here that is saying transformation, and they've restructured and they're delivering something completely different. They're no longer savings orientated for the organization. They're driving commercial opportunities and looking at that. So I think it's really important to get an understanding of the difference between the two. The muddy water comes when somebody says, well, we're changing, but we're radically changing, but we're not necessarily transforming. Then I just go, oh, listen, seriously, let's just ditch that. We do not need that. That's just overcomplicating. You've got change and you've got transformation. Change is when we are in a current state and we want to provide betterments to that current state, better, smarter, and faster. Transformation is where we have a vision of a completely different state. It's a future state, and therefore we're designing back from that point. And that I think that's, and anything in between really is just mute for me. Does that help?
Yeah, Mel, it does. I mean, I can really relate, because we're currently going through this whole change of in our organization, and exactly what you've said, where another meeting of transformation and another one that's thinking. It's extremely hard to have to balance between the two, because the communication channels will be completely different for both business units, are completely different. And
oh, Caroline, where I don't know about everybody else, but I'm losing the ability. I can't hear you. It's so sad, because it sounds like it's a really good comment that you're giving. Oh, what a shame. Oh, that is such a shame. Oh, maybe we could come back to that. I might send a note to Caroline on email afterwards, and then just see whether she might be able to share that, and I'll pop that into the replay with everybody as an anonymized use case or example. Yeah, thank you for trying to speak in there, and I know that you're speaking to us from across the waters, Caroline, as well. So it's probably the pipes of the fiber through the sea or through the airwaves. I don't know how it comes, but there we go. A couple of minutes to the hour, which means that we've gone a little bit over today, but what a great, interesting conversation. A happy new year, a happy 2023 to everybody. It is for us the year of transformation. We've got a massive version release of our framework coming out at the end of next month anyway. But certainly, you know, our theme as an organisation in 2023 is about fostering courage and development of more and more transformational mindsets in business, because that's what we need to help us navigate and thrive through extremities as opposed to just through change. So hopefully you've enjoyed today. It's the top of the week, so I wish everybody a fantastic Thursday and Friday, and of course an even better weekend of relaxation and hopefully joyousness, and hopefully I see you next week. And as always, what we will do is we will send the replay link to everybody on email. And I haven't forgotten, we'll definitely get the invite link to you so that you can pop in on a weekly basis. And I bid everybody adieu. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about anything, you know that I'm always available to you on chat, LinkedIn, or email mel.ross@adapt2digital.com. Have a great one, everybody. And hopefully the sun's shining for you, and we'll do for the rest of the week. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, man.